Good evening and welcome to the Daily News Roundup. I am Abigail Smythe. Coming up in the newscast, police corporal shot and killed in Trenchtown. Hanover detectives making headway in investigation into murder of Chinese businessman. 3 policemen face murder and bribery charges. Fraudster pleads guilty to using government minister's name to fleece people out of millions. Public sector groups reject aspects of government's offer under compensation review. In business, government spending exceeds target for April to August period. In the region, Trinidad and Tobago exploring ways to boost shipments of gas and petrochemical to help ease global shortages. Further overseas, British lawmakers rally for support to become the next leader following Prime Minister's resignation. And in sports, West Indies knocked out of the 2020 World Cup preliminary phase. Now for the news in detail. A police corporal, Oliver Mullings, from the Kingston Western Division, is among 2 men dead following a shootout in Trenchtown Thursday night. According to the JCF Corporate Communication Unit, around 10:45 p.m., the corporal was among a team of officers who responded to a call from residents in the area when they were attacked by gunmen. During the exchange of gunfire, both men were fatally shot. An illegal firearm was seized following the incident. Mullings is the 2nd policeman to have been killed in less than a week. On Saturday, 22-year-old Constable Brian Martin was shot dead at a wake on Ricketts Avenue in Kingston 13. Head of the Area 1 Police, Assistant Commissioner of Police, ACP Clifford Chambers, says detectives in Hanover have made headway in their investigation into the murder of a Chinese supermarket operator in the parish on Wednesday. According to ACP Chambers, 3 persons have been arrested and investigative leads indicate that more persons may be involved. Detectives continue to pursue these leads. The motive for the killing has been established as robbery. In the meantime, Chambers is appealing to members of the public to support the investigation by sharing what they know with detectives. Persons with information can call the Green Island Police at 876-956-9200, the Lucy Police at 876-956-2333, Crime Stop at 311, the JCF Tip Line at 811, or the nearest police station. According to police reports, 36-year-old He Jing, a shop operator of East Mountain Pride Avenue, Kingston 6, was gunned down in his supermarket in Orange Bay, Hanover on Wednesday. The supermarket was robbed of cash, liquor, and other items. Marlon Millis, the Clarendon man who was charged with the sexual assault of 2 young girls in Clarendon in March 2022, has had his bail revoked after being charged with similar offenses in Westmoreland while on bail. The 43-year-old was first arrested in Clarendon on March 16 when he was accused of committing serious sexual offenses against a 12-year-old girl in 4 Paths in the parish. While in custody, he was implicated in another case of sexual assault against a 16-year-old girl in November 2021. He was placed on an identification parade and was pointed out. He was then charged. The Clarendon Parish Court granted Millis bail on July 14 after his 3rd court appearance. He was ordered to stay away from the victims and the parish of Clarendon except when attending court. He was made to report to the Negril police station on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, and was also ordered to surrender his travel documents. However, Millis was back on the police's radar. This time in relation to the investigation of 2 incidents of sexual assault, again against young girls, one of them only 12 years old. He is accused of abducting, raping, and buggering her. He was arrested on Saturday, October 15, in relation to the 2 incidents on Tuesday, October 11, and later charged with additional offenses under the Sexual Offences Act. He is now awaiting his day in court in Westmoreland. Three policemen, Corporal Miguel Eubanks and Constables Kemar Dennis and Purcell Carter, are facing murder and bribery charges in the July 16 shooting death of 49-year-old Philip Wallace of Green Glide Close, St. Andrew. Their case is expected to be transferred to the Home Circuit Court next Monday. When the accused law enforcers appeared in the Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Court on Wednesday, their attorneys were notified that the Director of Public Prosecutions, Paula Llewellyn, would end proceedings in the Parish Court and transfer the matter to the High Court. The transfer was planned for Wednesday, but when the case was called up, the original documents had not yet reached the court. As a result, Justice Leighton Morris postponed the matter for the defense to make preparation for the transfer. The accused men's bail was also extended for them to return to court on October 24. Reports are that on July 16, about 10:41 a.m., Philip Wallace, who was a tiler, was standing in the community when a white Toyota Axio motorcar drove up. The three accused lawmen reportedly exited the vehicle and fired multiple shots at Wallace, killing him. It is further reported that the accused men also shot at Wallace's companion, but she escaped without injury. The accused cops are alleged to have requested money from Wallace following a raid a few days earlier. The policemen had reportedly arrested Wallace, who was in possession of half a pound of ganja, but requested $150,000 to drop the matter. A sum of $15,000 was allegedly paid over to the cops, but they allegedly charged Wallace and demanded that he pay the remainder of the requested sum in order for the matter not to proceed to court. Wallace, however, made a report to the Constant Spring Police and an investigation was launched into the allegations. Shortly after, he was shot and killed. Following investigations, the cops were arrested and charged. A fraudster has pleaded guilty to using Cabinet Minister and West Portland Member of Parliament Darrell Vaz's name to fleece people out of more than $4 million. 35-year-old Sean Latham, a merchandiser of Kingston 19, pleaded guilty in the St. Andrew Parish Court on Thursday. He was charged with obtaining money by false pretense, fraudulent conversion, and receiving cash above $1 million. He is to be sentenced on November 18 this year. The court has ordered Latham to make full restitution to his victims before the date of sentencing. Prosecutors led evidence that Latham used his mobile phone to con people into believing that he was Minister Vaz and he had connections with an upcoming motor vehicle auction at the Kingston Wharf. The victims paid sums of money to Latham, believing they were entering into a business transaction with the minister. One of the victims pursued the case against Latham. The West Portland MP was on hand on Thursday to observe the court proceedings. Mr. Vaz says he's pleased that the fraudster has been convicted and says he's grateful that he has had the opportunity to once again protect his name from the abhorrent actions of Latham. Mr. Vaz adds that he's hopeful that more people who are conned will come forward and have the fraudster held accountable. 4 persons who were detained following a car robbery in Portmore, St. Catherine on October 12 have been charged. The 3 men and a woman were arrested after the vehicle they stole from a woman in the municipality crashed when it was intercepted by cops. Charged with robbery with aggravation, conspiracy to robbery, and unlawful wounding are 23-year-old Joel Saunders from Mandela Terrace, Kingston 11, 25-year-old laborer Richard Beckford, 25-year-old bearer Nikhil Angus, and 23-year-old dancer Tanisha Palmer, all from Fitzgerald Avenue, Kingston 13. The 4 were charged by the Portmore CIB on Thursday and are scheduled to appear in the St. Catherine Parish Court on November 1, 2022. It was reported that about 6:05 a.m. on the morning of October 12, a woman and her son were in her Honda Fit motorcar at the intersection of Brayton Boulevard and Brayton Road when armed robbers pounced. The robbers stole the car and an alarm was raised. The police intercepted the vehicle on the Mandela Highway. However, the driver of the stolen car attempted to evade the cops but crashed into a railing in the vicinity of the New Haven community. The car and its occupants, as well as a pilot vehicle and its occupants, were all taken into police custody. The National Housing Trust, NHT, has fallen target to internet fraudsters trying to exploit its clients. In a statement on Thursday, the NHT said it has been alerted that some of its customers have been receiving phishing emails from persons purporting to be employees of the company. Phishing is a social engineering scam where an attacker sends a fraudulent message designed to trick a person into revealing sensitive information to the attacker or to deploy malicious software on the victim's infrastructure like ransomware. NHT notes that the emails from the fraudsters contain links requesting customers to log in or download applications to collect information for a giveaway promotion and to process refund application. The entity says it's not conducting any such promotion, nor does it collect customers' information in order to process refund applications. The NHT says application for refund is done on the company's website or using its mobile app and adds that it provides updates to customers electronically but never solicit personal information from clients. The two United States nationals implicated in the seizure of 21 firearms and more than 2,000 rounds of ammunition at a warehouse at the wharf in Kingston in March have been offered $10 million bail in the gun court. 36-year-old chef Jermaine Baker of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and 42-year-old construction worker Dervon Brown of Bronx, New York, were offered bail on charges of illegal importation of firearm and ammunition following a successful bail application by their lawyers last Thursday. The two foreign nationals are among 4 people who are charged in relation to the huge gun find. Godfrey Martin, believed to be the alleged mastermind, and his girlfriend Sherilyn McLean are also charged. The St. Elizabeth businessman, who is otherwise called Rev, was arrested on August 7 at a popular party in St. Anne, while McLean, who is an American citizen, was arrested and charged on September 13. The two defendants, who were earlier released on $5 million bail, also appeared in court last Thursday, and their bail was extended. All 4 defendants are to return to court on January 30 of next year. On March 4 of this year, 3 rifles, 18 handguns, and 2,216 rounds of ammunition were found after customs officers detected a suspicious package and summoned the contraband enforcement team. Valerie Nita Robertson, KC, is representing Brown, while Jacqueline Samuels Brown, KC, and attorney-at-law Everton Dua are representing Martin. Attorney-at-law Donahue Martin is representing Baker, while his colleague Vincent Wellesley appears for McLean. If Justice Leighton Pusey had his way, the cold-blooded and unrepentant Cocoa Peace killer who brutally murdered his cousin and her 4 children would be a distant memory and only be recalled by the judiciary for legal precedent. After sentencing the 23-year-old murderer Rashane Barnett to 5 concurrent life sentences with a stipulation that he serve 61 years and 8 months before parole, the judge called on Jamaicans to forget the killer and to keep the memory of his victims alive. Kamisha Wright and her children, 15-year-old Kimanda Smith, 12-year-old Shara Lee Smith, 5-year-old Rafaela Smith, and 23-year-old Keshawn Henry Jr. were found at their home on June 21 with their throats slashed and dozens of stab wounds. Barnett, who pleaded guilty in July, murdered his elder cousin and her kids after she welcomed him into her home and sought jobs for him when he fell on hard times. Justice Pusey said it is his hope that the killer's name is forgotten as others who committed similar offenses. He said instead people should remember those who lost their lives. The judge praised Wright's generosity as, despite her challenges, she opened her home to her cousin as she studied to become a nurse while operating a shop. As the judge addressed the court, Barnett, dressed in an orange and yellow tropical shirt and a green short pants, held his head down for most of the time, twiddling his thumbs and playing with his fingers. For the most part, he looked unbothered, except when he was asked by the judge to stand, at which time he appeared uncomfortable. Justice Pusey, who struggled to find words to describe the brutal crime, said that the death penalty could have been considered as the offense could be viewed as the worst of the worst. He was also of the view that Barnett was not deserving of a sentencing discount. The judge explained that persons who plead guilty early would normally be entitled to a discount under common law. However, he said the amendments to the Criminal Justice Administrative Act have standardized and codified the circumstances in which the discount would apply based on the time of the plea. But he said this case would be excluded as 5 persons were killed. The judge said the counterfactors to consideration of a discount included the compelling evidence of clothes and the murder weapon that forensically linked him to the murder, and the fact that the death penalty was no longer on the table. Director of Public Prosecutions Paula Llewellyn had initially served notice that her office would be seeking the death penalty. However, it withdrew the request after Barnett pleaded guilty. In determining Barnett's custodial term before eligibility for parole, the judge took note of the aggravating factors. These factors included the number of victims, breach of the family's trust, and multiple wounds, a lack of remorse, and the premeditation that he was, quote, going to kill some people, end quote. The judge's starting point was 55 years, which moved up to 65 with the aggravating factors. However, Barnett was credited for his early guilty plea, his young age, lack of previous conviction, and the 4 months he spent in custody. In the meantime, the DPP, who had recommended that Barnett served 60 years and 9 months before parole, said she was pleased with the judgment. Majority of the public sector groups in the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, JCTU, have rejected aspects of the government's offer under the Public Sector Compensation Review. In September, the government had submitted its offer and a breakdown of the new salary scales to the unions for review and response. President of the Confederation, Helene Davis White, says the negotiations have been stalled as 9 of the 11 unions under the umbrella of the JCTU have raised concerns about aspects of the proposed package. The trade union members have rejected what they describe as the wholesale shifting of all officers to the minimum salary except for persons in receipt of seniority. Mrs. Davis-White states that the unions have each communicated their concerns to the Ministry of Finance, but there has been no subsequent meeting to reach an agreement. They have called for the ministry to eliminate what they term the, quote, unfairness and inequity that abound in its proposal, end quote. And in business, government spending exceeded the target for the April to August period. Chairman of the Economic Program Oversight Committee, Keith Duncan, says the total expenditure was $299 billion, marginally ahead of budget by $2.5 billion. This was driven by recurrent program spending and was $15.7 billion, or 5.5% higher than the outturn for the corresponding period in 2021. Mr. Duncan notes that the current program spending reflected a faster pace of procurement than anticipated. He adds that interest costs also surpassed budget due to higher costs for servicing domestic debt. He says revenues were also ahead of budget, outweighing the excess spend. He states that for April to August, total revenue and grants of $297.8 billion was $30.9 billion, or 11.6% ahead of budget. This, he says, was primarily driven by higher than budgeted tax and non-tax revenues. He adds that this positive performance remains ahead of the outturns for April to August 2021 by $24.8 billion. Taxes, he said, also came in at $27 billion higher than budgeted. And in news from the region, the Antiguan government will be moving ahead to bury 5 unclaimed bodies that were once stored in a makeshift morgue, a refrigerated shipping container at the former Halberton Hospital's compound. The Chief of Staff in the Office of the Prime Minister, Lionel Hurst, confirmed that there was a recent breakdown of the refrigeration unit at the Ministry of Health's pathology unit being housed there. Hurst said technicians informed the government that the issue had been resolved. However, it was later discovered that the unit did not get as cold as it should have. This, he said, prompted the bodies awaiting post-mortems to be moved to a funeral home until burial. He added that the government will move forward with burying the 5 bodies that have not been claimed by relatives. In the meantime, the remaining bodies will stay at the funeral home pending total restoration of the morgue's facilities. And down in Trinidad and Tobago, the country which is among the world's top 3 exporters of ammonia and Latin America's largest producer of liquefied natural gas (LNG), is exploring ways to boost shipments of gas and petrochemical products to help ease global shortages. Energy Minister Stuart Young said on Wednesday that Trinidad has 3 liquefaction trains in service and 11 ammonia plants with a total production capacity of 5.2 million metric tons per year. The minister said the Caribbean nation could boost LNG exports to its neighbors in the Caribbean and South America for power generation once the restructuring of its flagship Atlantic LNG project is completed. Atlantic LNG's first liquefaction train was suspended in late 2020 due to insufficient gas supply. The country has increased production in the other 3 trains, but an ownership overhaul must be completed before full capacity and exports can be resumed. And on the international scene, several British lawmakers, including scandal-tarnished former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, rallied for support on Friday to become the country's next leader following Liz Truss's resignation. The governing Conservative Party has ordered a lightning-fast race that aims to have a new Prime Minister in place within a week. Millions of people are struggling to make ends meet as the cost of groceries, fuel, and other basics soars and record inflation pushes up mortgage rates. Rolling strikes have revealed the scale of discontent and a looming recession. Boris Johnson has not declared he's running, but bookmakers have made him one of the favorites to win the contest, reflecting the scale of division and disarray in the party as it picks its 3rd Prime Minister of the year. Liz Truss announced her resignation on Thursday after a turbulent 45 days, conceding that she could not deliver on her tax-cutting economic package, which she had to abandon after it caused turmoil in financial markets. House of Commons leader Penny Mordaunt was the first candidate to declare she's running to replace Truss. She is a 3rd favorite behind Treasury Chief Rishi Sunak and Johnson, who still faces an inquiry into whether he lied to Parliament while in office that could lead to his suspension as a lawmaker. Despite his troubles, Johnson is still adored by some Conservatives as a vote winner with a rare common touch who led the party to a big election victory in 2019. He is more popular with the party's grassroots than with lawmakers, and he is reviled by some for the chaos and scandal that marred his term in office. Nominations for a new leader will close Monday afternoon, and candidates need the signatures of 100 of the 357 Conservative lawmakers, meaning a maximum field of 3. Lawmakers will vote to knock out one of those and will hold an indicative vote on the final 2. The party's 172,000 members will then get to decide between the 2 finalists in an online vote. The new leader is due to be selected by October 28. And in sports, head coach of Jamaica's senior netball team, the Sunshine Girls, Connie Francis, says she is delighted with the performances from the Sunshine Girls as they have been nothing but brilliant at the ongoing America's Netball World Cup qualifiers. The girls romped to an emphatic 85-30 victory over St. Lucia at the National Indoor Sports Center on Thursday. Giselle Allison led the scoring for the Sunshine Girls with 56 goals, while Kelsey Jonas and Amanda Pinkney netted 22 and 7 respectively. It was easy pickings for the Sunshine Girls as they sparkled in every department, dominating from start to finish. The Jamaicans raced to a 24-6 lead at the end of the first quarter before adding a further 19 goals to finish the half with an impressive 43-14 advantage over the St. Lucians. With the Sunshine Girls dictating proceedings across the court, the St. Lucian lacked fluency in attack and could not stem the tide in defense. Jamaica cruised to the end of the third quarter, leading 68-20 before seeing out a comfortable win. And in cricket, two-time T20 World Cup champions West Indies were knocked out of the 2020 World Cup preliminary phase after suffering a defeat from Ireland. Opener Paul Sterling steered Ireland to an upset 9-wicket win over the West Indies on Friday, earning his team a spot in the Super 12s. Sterling had been struggling with the bat but returned to form with a composed 66 from 48 balls to help Ireland reach 150 for 1 in reply to West Indies' total of 146 for 5, reaching the victory target with 15 balls to spare. West Indies skipper Nicholas Pooran said his team didn't make the most of the ideal conditions after winning the toss and batting. Brandon King's 62 from 48 balls was the only standout innings in the last game of what was a disappointing tournament for the West Indies. They opened with an upset loss to Scotland before rebounding to beat Zimbabwe. The West Indies are the only team to win the World T20 title twice. Defending champions Australia will be aiming to amend the statistic and start the Super 12 stage against New Zealand on Saturday. Former champion Sri Lanka and Netherlands finished first and second in Group A to advance to the Super 12 round, where they will join the top 8 ranked teams. And that's it for the news roundup for today. I am Abigail Smythe. Have a great weekend and see you next time.